I'm Michael Parker, CEO and founder at Forge Fitness and Nutrition Coaching. Welcome. In this video, we are going to dive into habit and resistance based on knowledge. Just a quick note, be on the lookout for the pre-order notices related to the late spring 2020 release of my coming book on how to create sustainable fitness and nutrition success. Also subscribe on my website so you can get updates to that. This video essentially is a preview to a lot of the contents of that soon-to-be published book, so I hope you enjoy. Let's just dive right into habit and resistance. Knowledge. Very few people enjoy looking foolish or feeling ignorant. It's why we fear public speaking, the first day of school, and for a lot of us dating. Now in fitness, the lack of knowledge can often tie into the fear of failure that we've explored in another video. But we are going to look at how too much or a lack of knowledge can create resistance. And I see that in those two forms. The first one is an arrogance or a subscription to dogma, where people will research and they compare and they digest as much information about their choice as possible, regardless of where that information is coming from. And these people are just essentially looking to validate their decisions. They just want to ensure that they have structure, and I would say that there are some aspects of tribalism present usually. On the other hand, in the second resistance, you have ignorance. There's confusion, there's conflicting information, there's not an understanding of what approach is best for oneself. So the folks in this second group, they basically have no idea where to start. They don't know what to eat, they don't know how to exercise, or in general manage their well-being. But in both cases, we see selective application of knowledge, which is, in its own way, a form of resistance. But going back to the first scenario, the arrogantly educated, right? Many people can get tied up in a very specific kind of workout or diet plan, and then they become unwilling to explore alternatives. Now, this is the case even if the subscribed approach is not even working, or maybe has never worked. And that always has baffled me. And I see it very frequently with diets, but it does happen with fitness modalities as well. So supposed knowledge becomes a resistance, especially if we're comfortable, or perhaps our peer group is involved, and then we don't have to think. As I mentioned, tribalism is often key here, and I see that in just about every popular style of workout or fad diet. And the media does play a big role, especially with the hyper-popularized fads. If this many people are doing it, it must work, right? Wrong. But we get so emotionally connected to specific approaches, and then we resist change even if what we've been doing isn't even effective, or if it's producing little return. I'll give you an example. The keto diet was awesome in the beginning. You lost all this weight, and that was cool, but what it did is it reinforced your subscription to the approach. And over time, you find that this diet is unsustainable for you. So your results and your adherence, it just wanes. But this is the case when oscillation is not a response, right? We cling to many aspects of what worked in the past. I'll give you an example, another one. I've been working with a young woman for many years. And when we first met, she was a keto disciple. Her results had, of course, wavered significantly. And with her schedule, she just wasn't able to maintain that kind of preparation and focus for ketosis. She was ultra resistant to any other food lifestyle. And over the first few months, we just really were trying to find ways to incorporate keto despite the fact that it wasn't reasonable for her. On top of this, she also had a very specific vegetarian diet as well, almost vegan. No gluten, no grains, no meats of any kind. It was rather restrictive. But like a lot of women, her intake rarely exceeded 1,000 calories. She was a restaurant server by day and a barkeeper at night, on her feet all the time. Now, her exercise was maybe 5 days a week, but is pretty lame. Her Fitbit said her average output was 2,200 to 2,500 calories a day. But those workouts weren't very intense. But she was always fatigued, and so she started to begin resenting her workouts. She started resenting her food lifestyle. It took months of coaching, but finally she relented. She had nothing to lose, so we moved to a more balanced and reasonable lifestyle that was based on her vegan choices. And we basically altered her from those 5 workouts she was trying to do each week to just 3. But the intention was higher intensity and much more focus. We increased her caloric intake to 1900, but that put her at an average deficit of about 500 calories. She felt less fatigue, and she was less sore, and she had less desire to binge late at night. She was doing really great. She was doing great for like a year. But then she decided she wanted to do keto again because she felt that there were inherent benefits to her and her lifestyle based on her perception and her ongoing YouTube education. So now that her body composition was where she wanted it, she decided that she would just go back to her failed belief system. Fine. So I helped her transition smoothly, and it took a little while, and we got her back into the ketosis kind of a thing, but then she started regressing. Despite the fact that the ketogenic diet was her preference, she could not make it work within her life. So she started going through these cycles for a few months of resistance and regressions. And she created this self-imposed problem. She was inflexible. You have to be flexible with your approach. You have to find a higher level of satisfaction and consistency without these cycling failures. Anyway, she's recently re-embraced a reasonable vegan lifestyle, which is fine. And she can manage it. And she's since then abandoned the keto approach. She's doing great again. She's doing just great. But let me give you another scenario, right, for the beginners. So these are people who have very little functional knowledge about fitness or nutrition or how to incorporate it. This lack of knowledge creates resistance because people are afraid. They're afraid of injury. They're afraid of not seeing results. They're afraid of judgment, disruption to their predictable homeostatic comfort. And then, of course, they recognize that they're going to have to put forth effort. And I'll tell you, learning something new, especially if you don't want to, can be a very powerful resistance. Now, the second group is particularly susceptible to latching on to small pieces of information. And then from there, they start to form these unfounded resistances. I'll give you a fun, very rare, but interesting example. I have a longtime client with whom I've worked for years on mindset coaching, and we do advanced fitness. She's a badass. But she likes to supplement our work together with a small group. They do high intensity interval training. It's a little class at her gym. She does it twice a week. Well, anyway, one of her overweight coworkers was just blown away by her progress, and she's a novice in fitness as her coworker. And she noticed my client's results and she wanted to get involved. So my client explained to her how she meets with me every other week. We do that video chat. And the level of detail. She showed her the app and showed her workouts and how I program, and then explained my nutrition coaching and mindset coaching. She also talked to her about how she supplemented those 2 live classes each week. But her coworker didn't feel like she wanted to attend classes because she was extremely deconditioned. Yet she selectively held on to the notion of HIIT training, and she believed that it was the only right way to work out. And anything else was wrong or dangerous. Now, what was that based on? So I'll tell you this, her medical situation, her condition level, her joint health, her proprioceptive response, completely debilitated. This situation is grounds to avoid aggressive exercise, stuff like jumping, moving around heavily like burpees, because they are not the correct application of stress at this point. HIIT training is not appropriate. This woman was 280 pounds. She had acquired diabetes and had never exercised in her life other than walking. And I explained to her that based on her condition, that we would need to start with fundamentals. We would want to focus on her mobility, her joint integrity, and we'd create a progressive application of stress, and we would ramp up to HIIT. But despite my experience and my knowledge, she clung to that idea of HIIT because of my other client's success and what she was reading about HIIT online. She was doing all this research. Now, she was not looking to make habitual change. She was looking for a quick fix, and she thought that HIIT was the answer, along with a restrictive diet. So over a few sessions of working with this woman, I tried to gain rapport and trust and overcome resistance, and I outlined for her a very progressive plan that would move her, and start working with the habits that got her into the condition that she was in and get her out of it. I showed her how to understand the nutritional basics, how to incorporate appropriate exercise structure in a prudent manner based on her condition. Now, I use her as an example because from the very beginning, from the very first coaching session, she had a very unusual resistance. What I did discover is that she was trying to find a way to eat candy bars, ice cream, and pizza without changing any of her habits. or even actually exercising consistently. She thought that if she did a really intense hard workout a few times a week and super restricted her calories and just ate crap, that she could do whatever she wanted and she'd lose weight. Anyway, her lack of knowledge became a resistance because she did not seek to learn. Instead, she found snippets of selective information that essentially would support her poor food choices. Thus, a lack of knowledge can be quite deliberate. Now, on the bright side, though, that's rare. On the bright side, those people who are serious about improving become very less resistant to altering their habits over time, especially once they open their minds and they learn what works for them. You start to eliminate your resistances, and the results will follow. But it's a decision that one must make, and you have to commit to it. Now, she never did. She never did, and has since returned to her sedentary and destructive lifestyle. And I only gave you a small piece of the things that she would bring to our coaching sessions. They were snippets, like I had mentioned earlier, and she would take them and extrapolate them into these grossly complex concepts that had absolutely no fundamental meaning whatsoever. And that's actually, that part is common. Her complete resistance was a little unusual. Usually when you work with somebody like me or you hire a coach within my caliber, you're typically quite serious. And I found out that she was just looking for somebody to validate her bad choices, and that certainly wasn't me. I wish her very well. I really do hope she finds a positive, proactive solution for herself. And if you are watching this, or you ever see this, or you read my book, you know who you are. You got to get yourself in gear here, as we talked about in our last session.